Hello, everybody. This is Off Leash with Erik Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. We are on site at CPAC 2024. It's the mecca for conservatives around America, preparing for the most consequential election in American history. Erik Prince, of course, is on the board of CPAC and had the opportunity to provide a top-level briefing to some of the most significant conservative leaders in America with a around the world tour. And discussing all the hotspots that are grave danger and particular interest for American national security. So, Erik, next stop on the tour is Ukraine. Give us a little insight to what you briefed the conservative leaders about.
The next stop on the bleak world tour was the Ukraine war,
unfortunately,
which is a non-winner at this point. The Ukrainians just lost a key city of Avdiivka, which they've been fighting for many, many months, and they lost many people to do it, many thousands of people doing it.
So Putin owns it now. He's got that.
Yes, and so, look, right now, any major field maneuvers are going to be difficult because there's mud in the fields, right? The snow melts, you have soft fields. As the fields dry this spring, Ukraine doesn't have enough manpower, they don't have enough weapons. The U.S. or the Western Defense Industrial Base is not really able to keep up. So it's a disaster, and they need to get out of this war. A ugly peace is better than a sparkly war. And this war is not even sparkly. There is no possibility that the Ukrainians are going to retake all their land. And all they're doing now is grinding up future generations of Ukrainian men.
And Zelensky has not gotten a paycheck from the U.S. in months now. They've not gotten a new payment. The Senate just passed the $60 billion boondoggle emergency defense bill. The House is going to block it.
That also doesn't have any border security with it.
No.
So again, look, whether
for our border, maybe for the Ukrainian border.
Whether it's 10 billion, 60 billion, 600 billion, it's not going to move the needle. Ukraine is not going to eject Russia from all that territory. So let Crimea go, let Luhansk, let Donetsk. Again,
because it's only going to get worse.
An ugly peace is better than a hopeful, sparkly war. It's done, and it is not in the U.S. strategic interest, and hell, it's not even in the demographic issue of Ukraine to keep chewing up its men. They've burned through all their A-level fighters. Now they're on B's and C's. The average age of the soldiers is like 46 years old.
Okay, but you're saying it's done, but you are way too logical. All right, logic has not been a factor in the decision making around this war.
Done. They should have serious discussion with Putin about a ceasefire and trying to end this. I don't know if they are. Maybe Putin doesn't care. But at this point, the Russian Defense Industrial Base is cranked up and recovered. They have plenty of weapons. I was actually at the Saudi Defense Show a couple weeks ago, and it was unnerving to see all these Russian advertisers with these different drones showing footage of them smashing in killing American origin equipment, American howitzers, American tanks, American artillery pieces.
That was intentional. Displaying that at a Saudi defense show is to be able to say, the Russians are saying, bring it on because we're ready for you with our drone technology.
Look, the Russian army has learned a lot the hard way, but they've learned a lot and they've adapted. My worry is the U.S. military, especially the U.S. Defense Industrial Base, has not woken up to the realities of small drones in the hands of people in the field that can deliver a small, precise payload into the most vulnerable spot. Now, the Ukrainians have learned a lot as well, and they've done pretty well, despite being vastly outmanned and outgunned. But the Russian army is much more capable now than they were 2 years ago when they started this war, because we just passed the 2-year anniversary of this war. They need to make this thing stop.
Well, look, we all think we understand what drones are these days, but I've got a family member who's got a son who's a drone pilot, and I say, well, tell me about what it is he pilots. It's got a 66-foot wingspan and is 15 feet deep, and it's worth $6 million.
No, I'm talking about a small, what we can be considered almost a hobbyist drone with 10-inch blades that you fly with almost like VR goggles.
And no radar picks it up whatsoever.
And really no radar is going to pick it up. And even the Ukrainians have adapted where they can fly it underneath the electronic warfare jamming and fly it right into the vulnerable spots of a tank. So you have a $2 million tank taken out by a $600 or $700 armed drone.
So you're basically saying in this tour of the world, you're saying advantage Russia, and March is almost upon us. So within 6 weeks, the fields are going to dry, and Russia has an even greater advantage. Where does this thing go? At what point does Zelensky say, well, we can burn through some more, cash from the Americans, but we're going to lose hundreds of thousands more lives? Does anybody care that there's hundreds of thousands more lives at stake at this point?
The forced conscription and the press ganging of going out and finding men and dragging them off to war is not great for the Ukrainian state, and they need to find a way to make this end.
Yeah, look, in the interview that Tucker Carlson had with Putin, it was revealed to us that Vladimir Putin has not had a phone call with Joe Biden in 2 years. If that's not even, there's not even a conversation going on there, how do we get to the conclusion of this war? Because I think at this point, Zelensky's in it. He's not going to back out of it because he's too proud, and it's going to take Donald Trump to end it, which is still 10 months away.
Yeah, I can see this going on into 2025. So it's a look, and even despite this, so there's been a war in Ukraine for 2 years now, and you still have 2/3 of the NATO countries not spending 2% of their money on defense. So Trump is right to call them on their bullshit years ago, and still should, right? Germany's at like 1.4, 1.5% of the biggest economy in all of Europe, and they're not doing their part. So why do we, the taxpayers, have to spend another $60 billion funding Ukraine?
Sure, and
it's not right, it's not fair.
And the establishment elites in Washington clutching their pearls still at Donald Trump's comments about NATO, and yet NATO's not pulling its weight. But just as significantly is, Europe hasn't paid even 10% of what we've paid for this war in Ukraine. That's outrageous. They have only paid 10% of the cost, and yet they have 90% of the risk. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, I think that math is pretty close. But a few of the countries, the Baltics, they have certainly stepped up because they're the ones closest to the the bad breath of the bear. But Germany, France, the other major countries, a lot of those guys are still not spending 2%. So it's wrong. It's this thing needs to come to an end. And the forever war people in Washington, I think they should go volunteer to serve a term on the front lines if they're so in favor of fighting to the last Ukrainian man.
They've got nothing at stake.
They have no skin in the game.
In the world tour, next stop is Taiwan. What did you brief conservative leaders here at CPAC about Taiwan?
I made a ugly, sad prediction. I think the Chinese are going to move, they're going to do something on Taiwan in the next couple of months. The weather window for an amphibious operation opens around April, May. I heard today that the Chinese instructed the United States to cease all contact with Taiwan.
Instructed.
Has
that ever happened before?
Nope. And there's a lot of evidence to show that this big phone outage that happened all across America was a consistent cyber attack.
Oh, hold on. Off leash. This is news. I need you to pay attention to this. You just said that China perpetrated a cyber attack against us that shut down cell service for our major carriers. That's
to the point of even the 911 networks not working either. So it was probably a test run. It was done in parallel with that warning to cease contact with Taiwan. So if there's more contact made with Taiwan, then we should certainly expect more cyber attacks and all the rest. So it's when I say buckle up, this is going to be a wild and dangerous year. It's happening now. It's starting even earlier than I thought it would.
Why don't we return the favor in kind? Do we not have the capability for our own cyber attacks?
We certainly, I'm sure, do. I hope we do. And but I just
at least a proportional response.
I just don't know if the guys in charge of the White House are up to the task, and they're going to get rolled. So again, the weather window opens April, May. Whether they do a decapitation strike, there's some islands that Taiwan owns that are very close to the Chinese mainland, like Quemoy and Matsu, and I can see them doing some kind of provocation with a maritime militia where they seize one of those islands, or they have a accident where they put a boat ashore there. Lots of ways to press check and to see what the U.S. response is. If there's not a proper response to I think a pretty obvious cyber attack in the last few days, then I think we can expect to see a lot more Chinese provocations.
All right, now
because certainly, just like the 165 attacks that the Iranians made against U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq,
without any real consequence,
which they got away with, until you deliver consequence to the people that attack us, it's going to get worse. I've said before, repeatedly, this is the Carter administration part 2.
I got to say this though. Here we are.
Because remember also, this is a hostage crisis. There are Americans still held hostage in Gaza. The administration doesn't want to talk about
130, 40 days later.
Yeah, but there's 6 or 8 of those people are American citizens.
Unbelievable. No discussion about it whatsoever. Biden meets with the widow of Navalny, Putin's political opponent, killed in prison, right? He meets with them in a big public showing, meeting with. Has he met with any of the families of the hostages in Gaza today?
No, and he met with Navalny's widow, and he totally botched her name. Again,
I think Biden botches his own name, unfortunately.
Well, it's really sad. Jill Biden should be really held to account on this, because at this point it's senior citizen abuse.
It's elder abuse. Absolutely. Look, this is a world tour. This is the briefing that Erik Prince provided to top conservative leaders in America here at CPAC. We're going to have one more discussion on this world tour in our next segment. Until then, this is Off Leash with Erik Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. Thanks.